Good evening, friends. I'm glad you've joined us here on YouTube for our Sunday night Bible study, Prophets, Priests, and Kings. We still are not quite sure what we're doing, but we did get one thing straight. We have figured out, thanks to Trey's help, how to do the broadcast horizontally, or what we call that, landscape. And so I hope that is working. Supposedly that translates better over onto YouTube and to your screens and all that. But we think we have that straight. We hope we're live right now. But glad you're here. And I'm going to start some teaching. We are meeting tonight, and we are meeting next Sunday night, which I am well aware is Super Bowl Sunday. And that is part of the reason for the 5:45 start time, so we could stay consistent throughout. I have no plans of moving the time of this Bible study for Super Bowl Sunday. So as I begin to contemplate that, so we wouldn't have to meet early or any of those things, the kickoff for the game. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm a sports fan. Not that interested in the game. It hadn't really motivated me a whole lot. I believe it's the Seahawks versus the Patriots. But anyway, kickoff is at 5:30. I realize that what some people are interested in, they want to hear who's singing America the Beautiful. They want to see who's singing the national anthem and see how good a job they did. They want to watch the starting lineups. They want to watch the kickoff. The kickoff is at 5:30, 5:35, something like that. So here's how it's going to work. You're going to get to watch the national anthem. You're going to watch the kickoff. And then after you watch the kickoff, you are putting that on hold or recording it, and you're coming to YouTube. And so we're going to have Bible study during the first quarter, and during the second quarter, we're going to have Bible study right here on YouTube. Originally, when I was working on this, I talked to some folks at church, and I said something about, well, maybe I'll just do my Bible study during halftime. And they were like, oh no, people want to watch that more than anything. But they don't want to watch the crummy halftime show that the NFL's put together. They either want to watch the Turning Point USA Christian halftime show or the Forrest Frank Christian halftime show. Either way, the way it's going to work, you watch the kickoff, you come to YouTube, we have Bible study. Bible study will end just in time for you to go find the Christian halftime show online. You can watch the Christian halftime show, and then boom, you can watch the second half. That's how it's going to work. So I know next week is Super Bowl night. We're meeting same time, same place, 5:45 on YouTube. And then that'll be week 3. We're going to take a break because the next Sunday night, which is February 15th, is our youth group Valentine's banquet for the church. It's a fundraiser for summer youth camp. So make your reservations for that. We'll take a break from Bible study. We'll all be at the church in the gathering place Sunday evening, February the 15th, for supporting our youth group. And then we'll come back beginning February 22nd, 3 more weeks, and we will complete the study on YouTube every night, every Sunday night at 5:45, including next week. Let me give you a quick review. Not very long at all, but I gave you a little timeline, and if my production manager can make sure that I'm in the right place for this to be visible. How am I doing? Doing good. I'm showing seven, what's the word I want? 7 parts of Jewish history. I can't think of the word I want. Help me out, production manager. Okay, nothing there. So 7 segments of Jewish history. All right?
Periods.
Periods. Thank you so much, dear production manager. 7 periods. All right? There's creation, followed by the patriarchs, followed by Egypt, the Exodus, the wilderness, the conquest, followed by the period of the judges, followed by the United Kingdom, followed by the divided kingdom, followed by the exile and the restoration. Okay? And there's all the books, there's all the key people. The reason I'm showing this to you again is because I wanted to point a couple of things out tonight. I meant to point this out last week, but I didn't. Do you remember last Sunday morning when we were all iced and snowed in? I preached out of the book of Job. I said Job is the oldest book in the Bible. Job was a contemporary of Abraham and Isaac. Okay, so Job falls here. Okay, this is when Job lived, when Job was tested. And so, if you consider Job as a contemporary of Abraham, you can go over here to this period here, and you can see that Moses was born in 1526, which means that Job preceded Moses by 500 or 600 years. So the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, the ones written by Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, written by Moses. Moses wasn't born till 1526. Job lived around 2150, 2100 BC. So that is why scholars say Job was, though it doesn't appear in the Bible in that place, it appears in the books of wisdom and poetry. Job was written significantly before the books that Moses wrote. So you can kind of get this Jewish history in perspective. Now, the next thing I want you to get in perspective is this study that we're doing, Prophets, Priests, and Kings. This study that we're doing begins right about here, near the end of the period of the Judges. There were not kings during the period of the Judges. People were ruled, or the better term would be governed. People were governed by judges. And the judges that governed were in many ways more military leaders than anything else. The judges we know best are Deborah. There are 12 of them, but Deborah, Gideon, Jephthah, and Samson are the ones we know best. But also there was Samuel, and that's significant tonight. Samuel bridges this gap. I'm going to do this right here so I can hold it a little better. Samuel, although I can no longer see through it, Samuel bridges this gap between the period of the Judges and the United Kingdom. When the area of Israel, the area of Judah, all of the Hebrew people were under one king. And there were 3 kings within that United Kingdom: Saul, David, and Solomon. They ruled 40 years each, 120 years of this United Kingdom. Samuel served in 3 different ways. He was quite influential. He was a judge. He was really the last of the judges. He was a priest. He carried out priestly duties for the people, and he was a prophet. So Samuel is the one who bridges the transition between the period of the Judges and the period of the monarchy, the United Kingdom, and it is Samuel that is the influential leader. So for this study that we are in, this study is going to go from Samuel unto the end of the Old Testament. Are we getting that, production manager? So from Samuel to the end of the Old Testament, which is around 432 BC. After the exile and the Israelites are allowed, after the Persians overtake the Babylonians, they're allowed to come back, rebuild the temple, rebuild the walls. And so that's the period that we are covering. And within this period, we have the 3 kings that we know best, the most historically affirmed periods in all of this through secular history, the reign of Saul, the reign of David, the reign of Solomon. And then what follows that in the divided kingdom, which I'm listing key characters. I didn't list them because within this divided kingdom, there were 38 kings and 18 prophets between Judah in the south and Israel in the north. And so that is the study. So tonight, let's begin with Samuel. Samuel, the judge and the prophet and the priest, who was God's leader in the transition that led to the beginning of the kings. We're going to begin in 1 Samuel 8. The first 7 verses of 1 Samuel tell us about Samuel. And we're going to go back to these early verses at one point. But really, this study begins in 1 Samuel 8. Now, as we talk about Samuel and his significance, I want to take us to one passage that's in the book of Hosea. Hosea is the first of the minor prophets. So you have the major prophets, and we'll get to that in the next few weeks. You have the major prophets, and you have the minor prophets. There's 5 major prophets. There's five books of the major prophets, and there's 12 books of the minor prophets. The first book of the minor prophets is Hosea. And so that's where we're going to go, just real quickly. And I'm not going to use my NIV. I'm going to use my ESV because I want you to hear this translation. Hosea chapter 12, verse 13. And this is significant as we talk about prophets, priests, and kings. Verse 13. By a prophet, the Lord brought Israel up from Egypt. And by a prophet, he was guarded. So, are we talking about one prophet there or 2 prophets? That's important. First, it says, by a prophet, the Lord brought Israel up from Egypt. It's pretty clear who Hosea is talking about there. Who brought the Israelites up from Egypt? That would be Moses. And as we talk about Old Testament prophets, we consider Moses to be the first prophet. And clearly, that's who the prophet Hosea is referring to. By a prophet, the Lord brought Israel up from Egypt. And then it says, by a prophet. And you think, oh, is he talking about Moses again? Well, maybe, could be. But there's a key word, and. By a prophet, the Lord brought Israel up from Egypt, and by a prophet. The implication is it's a different prophet. We're not sure which one. And it says here, he was guarded. Now this gets very tricky. Well, who's he? Well, it's not Moses. We're not talking about Moses. Generally, when we speak of Israel or any nation, we use the feminine, she. We would refer to the nation as she. But in this case, the writer is referring to the nation as he. Because when they say Israel, they are specifically referring to the 12 tribes. And so to understand that, we need to realize who is Israel. Well, Israel is Jacob, Isaac and Rebekah's son, Abraham's grandson. The patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph, who was sold into slavery in Egypt. Jacob, do you remember when Jacob encountered the divine messenger, perhaps God himself, and Jacob wrestles with this divine messenger? Put my ESV back up there, grab my NIV, and I'm going to go to Genesis. Genesis chapter 32, verses 27 and 28. Jacob is wrestling with this divine messenger. And the man asked him, what is your name? And Jacob he answered, it's my name, Jacob. Then the man says, the divine messenger, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men and have overcome. God changes Jacob's name to Israel. And that is why Hosea uses the masculine. He's referring to the patriarch of the 12 tribes. The 12 tribes who are Israel. And he says that a prophet will guard you. Another translation says this: there is a prophet who preserved Israel. Some scholars say that prophet was Samuel. That Samuel was the servant of God, the prophet, who preserved, who sustained all of Israel during a most unsteady and uncertain time. There was transition in leadership. There was tremendous threats from the outside. The Philistines to the west, the Ammonites to the east. There was tremendous opposition and threats. And leadership was beginning to fail, and we'll get to that in a minute. And in the midst of the failing leadership and the outside threats, it was Samuel, the man of God, the prophet, who was, sometimes we'll use the phrase, the one who held it all together, the glue that held it all together. In a nation that was falling apart, Samuel perhaps is the one who holds it all together. Perhaps that is what Hosea, or that is who Hosea was referring to, that prophet. So let's talk about that failure in leadership. We're talking about the things kind of falling apart. First of all, the priest. So do you remember who the priest was when Samuel was born? It was a priest by the name of Eli. And we find in 1 Samuel chapter 1, we're going to begin in the middle. You know, Samuel's mother was Hannah. Hannah was unable to have children. Hannah went to worship, and there went to sacrifice and pray that the Lord would give her a son. Picking this up in the middle of verse 9, it says this. Now Eli, the priest, was sitting on a chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. In bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. Now, let's go to the middle of verse 11. It says this. Oh, no, I'm going to keep reading. I stopped too soon. Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. And she made a vow, saying, O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life. So that is Hannah's promise to God, and Hannah was Samuel's mother. Eli was the priest in the temple who encountered Hannah there. Jump to verse 17, still in 1 Samuel 1. Let's see how this story goes. I turned too many pages. Verse 17, Eli answered. So Eli said to Hannah, go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him. So Eli the priest receives a word from God to tell Hannah that God is going to grant you what you have asked today. Jump to verses 24 through 28. Samuel is born. God has granted her prayer. Verse 24, after he was weaned, he being Samuel, she took the boy with her, young as he was, along with a 3-year-old bull, an ephah of flour, and a skin of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord at Shiloh. When they had slaughtered the bull, they brought the boy to Eli, the priest. And she said to him, as surely as you live, my Lord, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I've asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord. And he worshiped the Lord there. So you know the stories. Hannah has the child that she prayed for, and then she keeps her promise to God, I'm going to bring him to you, that he would serve. And so she leaves her son Samuel there in the temple, and Samuel grows and learns and serves there under the priest Eli. Now jump to chapter 2, verse 11. Then Elkanah is Hannah's husband, Samuel's daddy, went home to Ramah. But the boy ministered before the Lord under Eli the priest. So Eli was the priest. Samuel was a judge. It is the next generation that begins to falter. Eli appoints his sons as priests. Their names are Hophni and Phinehas. And we find out what kind of young men they are in chapter 2, verse 12. Eli's sons were wicked men. They had no regard for the Lord. Very clear and concise condemnation of Hophni and Phinehas, Eli's son, but it gets worse from there. Verse 17. 1 Samuel 2. This sin of the young men was very great in the Lord's sight, for they were treating the Lord's offering with contempt. It gets worse from there. Verses 22 to 25. Now Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing to all of Israel, and how they slept with the women who served at the entrance to the tent of the meeting. So he said to them, "Why do you do such things? I hear from all the people about these wicked deeds of yours. No, my sons, it is not good report that I hear spreading among the Lord's people. If a man sins against another man, God may mediate for him. But if a man sins against the Lord, who will intercede for him?" His sons, however, did not listen to their father's rebuke, for it was the Lord's will to put them to death. So Eli passes the priesthood on to his sons, Hophni and Phinehas, but they are unfaithful, they are sinful, and God rejects them, and they die soon after that. Now let's talk about the judges. Samuel was the last of the judges. He passed judgeship on to his sons. Now we go to 1 Samuel 8, which is really where this study begins. 1 Samuel 8, verses 1 through 3. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as judges for Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So we see the failure of the priests who succeeded Eli. We see the failure of the judges who succeeded Samuel. And so what grows from that is a failure in leadership, and the people, because of the leadership failure they see, and because of the threats from the Philistines to the west, the Ammonites to the east, they begin to desire a king. A king like other nations had. They become jealous of this. And so what we see is that this desire for kingship grows out of the failure of men to honor their offices. Eli's sons failed to live up to the priesthood. Samuel's sons failed to live up to their judgeship. And the people began to ask for a king. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verses 4 and 5. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, "You are old, and your sons do not walk in your way." See, they're seeing, they still have trust in Samuel, but they're like, "Samuel, you're not going to live much longer. We don't like your sons. We don't trust your sons. They're dishonest." And then they say, "Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have." The people come to Samuel, the judge, and the priest, and the prophet, and they say, "Would you please appoint a king?" You see, it was the role of a prophet to appoint a king, to be God's spokesman, to find a king. And so they go to Samuel. "Will you please bring us a king?" Samuel doesn't like it. Samuel doesn't like that request. And he begins to talk to God about it. We find Samuel's conversation with God in chapter 8, verses 6 through 9. When they had assembled, in chapter 7, let's go to 8. Chapter 8, verses 6. Samuel's talking to God. But when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king." See, Samuel wasn't their king to begin with. God was king. Yahweh was king. They have rejected Eli's sons, the priests. They have rejected Samuel's sons, the judges. But when they say, "We want a king," God is saying they've really rejected me. They're going to trust an earthly leader more than they trust me. And so he says, "Listen to what the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly and let them know what the king who will reign over them will do." And we're not, for the sake of time, we're not going to go through all of that. But God tells Samuel that if they have a king, here's what the king's going to do. The king is going to make your young men go to battle. He's going to make your young men serve in his courts and serve in his army. He's going to make your young women dance for him and perform for him. He's going to make your young women cook for him and bake for him. And then he's going to tax you. He's going to tax your livestock. He's going to tax your food. And you need to warn these people. They think they want a king, but their king is going to require all of this from them, and he's just a man. Samuel tries to warn them. Go to chapter 8, verses 19 through 22. He does. This says, "But the people refused to listen to Samuel. 'No,' they said, 'we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles.' When Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. The Lord answered, 'Listen to them and give them a king.' Then Samuel said to the men of Israel, 'Everyone go back to his town.'" That is the transition from the period of the judges to the period of the kings. And the kings would continue until Israel is defeated by the Assyrians, Judah is defeated by the Babylonians, and all of the kings are destroyed or carried into exile or executed. And then the Israelites and the Jews serve in exile. Okay, where are we? We're about to move into 1 Samuel 9. God has told Samuel, "Do what the people say. I will allow them to have their request." Now, this is a reality. Sometimes God allows us to have what we want. It's not always for our best. We will continue to push against God, to say, "God, I want this for my life. God, I'm not going to listen to you. God, I'm not going to hold your word." God will allow it, even though it's not for our best. And so God allows this. And so Samuel begins to do what God has told him to do, to anoint a king for the people. So, 1 Samuel 9, here it goes. We begin the era of kings. "There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, Kish. He was the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bekorah, the son of Aphiah, of Benjamin. And he had a son named Saul, an impressive young man without equal among the Israelites, a head taller than any of the others. So Saul's daddy was a man by the name of Kish. Saul was a young man, and he was an impressive young man. He was a big young man. He was a strong young man, and he was likely a handsome young man. And all of those things get people's attention. When we find Saul for the first time, he's looking for his daddy's donkeys. How about that? His dad Kish has lost his donkeys, and he has sent his son Saul with servants with him to go find and retrieve his donkeys. That's where we first find Saul, looking for his dad's donkeys. We pick it up, verse 6, chapter 9. So he's with his servants. They're looking for the donkeys. They can't find them. But the servant, one of the servants with Saul, replied, "Look in this town. There is a man of God." Now you're about to find out who the man of God is. Who do you think he is? Who do you think the man of God is that the servant knows is in the next town? It's Samuel. He is highly respected, and everything he says comes true. He's a prophet. Let's go now. Perhaps he will tell us what way to go, what way to take. Well, what they're wanting to know from Samuel is they're wanting to know where the donkeys are. Okay, that's all they want to know. We're going to go to the man of God, Samuel. Samuel, can you tell us which way to go to find Saul's daddy's donkeys? Saul said to the servant, "If we go, what can we give this man? The food in our sacks is gone. We have no gift to take to the man of God. What do we have?" The servant answered him again. "Look," he said, "I have a quarter of a shekel of silver. I will give it to the man of God so that he will tell us what way to take." Now here is something very interesting in verse 9. It is in parentheses. Okay. One thing that helps you understand this is that Samuel didn't write 1st and 2nd Samuel. We don't know who wrote 1st and 2nd Samuel. A lot of scholarly debate, but Samuel likely didn't write 1st and 2nd Samuel, and kind of like the book of Job. These books are about Samuel. They're not by Samuel. Now, Samuel probably did write the book of Judges and write the book of Ruth. So Samuel was writing those. He could have written the book of Joshua, but probably scholars debate, did Joshua write Joshua or did Samuel write Joshua? That's a good theological debate. But Samuel likely wrote Judges, and he likely wrote Ruth, but he likely didn't write 1st and 2nd Samuel. So 1st and 2nd Samuel were written after Samuel died. And so the writer interjected this insight. It's very interesting. Verse 9. Formerly in Israel, if a man went to inquire of God, he would say, "Come, let us go to the seer." S-E-E-R. I hope you have your Bibles open so you can see it there. It's 1 Samuel 9, verse 9. 9. You see, during the days of Samuel, they were called seers. S-E-E-R. One who sees. One who has visions from God. And so what the writer of 1 Samuel is interjecting here is he's saying at the time when they saw Samuel, they would have called him a seer. They wouldn't have called him a prophet. And so we have that little bit of insight. Come, let us go to the seer. And this is the great insight to put it all together. He says, because the prophet of today, so we know whoever wrote this after Samuel was gone. Because the prophet, the word that's currently used, the prophet of today used to be called a seer. Great insight. Verse 10. Good, Saul said to his servant. Come, let's go. So they set out for the town where the man of God was. As they were going up the hill to the town, they met some girls coming out to draw water, and they asked them, "Is the seer here?" "He is," they answered. He's ahead of you. Hurry now. He's just come to our town today, for the people have a sacrifice at the high place." Now, there's a lot of really cool insights in here that I'm going to try to bring out for you. About this sacrifice, pay attention. "As soon as you enter the town, you will find him before he goes up to the high place to eat. The people will not begin eating until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice." Now, I want to point out there that was a function of a priest. It was the priest who blessed the sacrifices. So we've now seen through what we've read that indeed Samuel was a judge and a priest and a prophet. He was a judge. He appointed his sons as the judges to succeed him. They failed. We see that he was a prophet. The people, Saul and his servants, went into the town to find the man of God, and the writer explained the prophet used to be called a seer. They were looking for the prophet, Samuel. And here it says that he would be the one to bless the offering, to bless the sacrifice. So he was a priest. He was a judge, he was a prophet, he was a priest. He did all of those functions. He must bless the sacrifice. Afterward, those who are invited will eat. Go up now, and you should find them about this time. They went up to the town, and as they were entering, it was Samuel coming toward them on his way to the high place. Now, the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel. This is great. The story gets so awesome here. The day before, same time. "About this time tomorrow, I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin." Remember, we just learned that at the beginning. Saul and his daddy Kish were Benjamites from the tribe of Benjamin. "I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin." And here's the word from God to Samuel. "Anoint him leader over my people Israel. He will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines." Now, another little tidbit I want to point out to you here. It says here, "Anoint him leader over my people Israel." If you remember last week, we were going through the key words, okay? Prophet, priest, and king. The Hebrew word for king is melech. That's the word for king. Whenever the Old Testament talks about David, refers to David as melech. When it talks about Saul, it uses the Hebrew word magid. Never uses the term melech for Saul. Only David and Solomon. Uses magid for Saul. Magid is not the word that's translated king. Most closely, it's a military leader. Verse 16. "Anoint him," it doesn't say king, because it's not the word melech. It says anoint him leader over my people Israel. He will deliver them from the hand of the Philistines. "I've looked upon my people, for their cry has reached me." When Samuel caught sight of Saul, the Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you about. He will," here we go, "govern my people." It's the word that's used there. Remember, the judges were not kings. They governed. They were governors. They were commanders. And once again, we use this term here for Saul. He will govern the people. He was a leader. He was a commander. He was a governor. Now, we eventually, through Jewish history, refer to him as king. He was a king. But the true monarch began with David. We'll talk about that later. We haven't gotten there yet. Saul approached Samuel in the gateway and asked, would you please tell me where the seer's house is? There's that word, S-E-E-R apostrophe S. Would you please tell me where the seer's house is? Later on in history, would have said, would you please tell me where the prophet's house is? But now they call them seers. Verse 19, I am the seer, Samuel replied. Go up ahead of me to the high place, for today you are to eat with me. And in the morning I will let you go and will tell you all that is in your heart. And then, it talks about that if we're obedient to do what God, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and he will add all these things. So on top of the fact that Samuel is about to tell Saul that God has appointed you as the leader of all the people, as the commander of all the people. You are going to be the deliverer of all the people. In addition to that news, this is great, verse 20. As for the donkeys you lost 3 days ago, do not worry about them. They have been found. And to whom is all the desire of Israel turned, if not to you and to all of your father's family? So this is awesome. Samuel says to him, the seer, not only am I about to tell you the biggest news of your life, that God has appointed you the governor, the leader, the commander of all of the people. In addition to that, I'm going to tell you where your donkeys are. And that's the original reason they went to go find Samuel. The only reason they went to go find Samuel was to see if the seer could tell them where the donkeys were. And so Samuel says, I've got some big news for God. And in addition to that, I'll tell you where your donkeys are. That just makes me laugh. God always does more than we think he's going to do for us when we're faithful to him. He will tell us who we're going to be for him, and he'll also tell us where our donkeys are. Verse 21, Saul answered, But am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans of the tribe of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me? And like many who are called to be leaders, their first reaction is, I'm not good enough to do that. Why in the world would you call me? As Saul gives that answer, who does he sound like? It sounds just like Gideon. Gideon was one of the judges. And you remember when Gideon was called by God on the threshing floor, Gideon said, I'm from the smallest clan of the smallest tribe, and I'm the least in my family. And God said, it doesn't matter. I'm calling you. And I will be with you, and I will equip you. And so that's the way it was with Gideon, and that's the way it was with Saul. Saul becomes the leader that the people wanted. He becomes the leader that the people asked for, and he becomes that leader by God's grace, by God's calling, and with the anointing of Samuel, the prophet, the priest, and the judge. Jump ahead now to chapter 11. Very soon, Saul will carry out a heroic act that will win the allegiance of the people. This heroic deed happens in the area that's called Transjordan. Transjordan was east of the Jordan River, and it primarily embodied the region, the territory that was occupied by the tribe of Manasseh, one of the 12 tribes. And so they were there. And the town that was there was Jabesh Gilead. Well, Jabesh Gilead had been overrun by the Ammonites. The Ammonites were the primary threat to the Israelites to the east. Really, this Transjordan region is really the area of Gilead and the area of Ammon, or the Ammonites, to this very day. It's the area today would be the nation of Jordan. And to this very day, the capital of Jordan today is called Ammon. Ammon, Jordan is the capital. And so this region then was called Ammon, and it was the Ammonites who were there. And so the Ammonites have come in and they've taken hold of the town of Jabesh Gilead from the tribe of Manasseh. And so the Ammonites offer a treaty, and it's not a very appealing treaty. You see, they say, we will allow you to be here, and we will allow you to have peace here if you will allow us to do one thing. We would like to gouge out one eye of every man, because we want to shame you, to shame Israel, to shame your God. So how would you like that to be the peace treaty? We will give you peace, and we will allow you to live here if you'll just let us gouge out one eye of every man. And that will be just a forever marker of who's really in charge. Well, the people aren't real fond of that peace treaty. And so they very quickly send messengers. And they go and find, guess who? The son of Kish, Saul. They find Saul to deliver what has happened. And let me kind of get my bearings here. Let me pick it up in verse 6. No, that's not where I want to be. Yeah, it is. Chapter 11. No, that's not where I want to be. Chapter 15, verses 10 through 12. Let's pick it up there. When they arrived at Gibeah, a procession of prophets met him. The Spirit of God, and it's talking about Saul. Here it is. The Spirit of God came upon him in power, and he joined in their prophesying. When all those who had formerly known him saw him prophesying with the prophets, they asked each other, "What is this that has happened to the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets?" A man who lived there answered, "And who is their father?" So it became a saying, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" God has now filled Saul with his spirit. Pick up the story in verse 16. Saul replied, "He assured us that the donkeys had been found." But he did not tell his uncle what Samuel had said about the kingship. Now there's the first time we find the word kingship. Samuel summoned the people of Israel to the Lord at Mizpah and said to them, "This is what the Lord God of Israel says. I brought Israel up out of Egypt, and I delivered you from the power of Egypt and all the kingdoms that oppressed you. But you have now rejected your God who saves you out of all your calamities and distresses, and you have said, 'No, set a king over us.' So now present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and clans." Okay, what is he saying to them? I'm about to keep going. But he's saying to them that you asked for a king, God has anointed me king, and now I want you to prepare. Let's jump ahead. Go to chapter 15. Here it is. Now, sorry friends, I'm getting all discombobulated. Back to verse 11. 14 and 15, chapter 11, 14 and 15. So Saul hears the people's cry. They have challenged us, they have threatened us, they're going to gouge all our eyes out. And he's saying, "You have asked me to be king, God has anointed me king. And so here's what I'm telling you to do. We are going to organize ourselves into armies, into clans, and tomorrow we will return to Jabesh Gilead, and we will challenge the Ammonites. The next day, Saul separated his men into 3 divisions. During the last watch of the night, they broke into the camp of the Ammonites, and they slaughtered them until the heat of the day. Those who survived were scattered so that no 2 of them were left together. Verse 14, then Samuel said to the people, come, let us go to Gilgal, and there reaffirm the kingship. So all the people went to Gilgal and confirmed Saul as king in the presence of the Lord. There they sacrificed fellowship offerings before the Lord, and Saul and all the Israelites had a great celebration. Saul's heroic act of faith happened after and only after the Bible says that God filled him with his Spirit and empowered him. Saul's faithfulness was short-lived. Saul's allegiance to God waned. He became selfish. He became self-centered. He became self-affirming. And some scholars say that perhaps he suffered from some form of mental illness. And we find Saul beginning to falter in chapter 15. 1 Samuel 15, we'll begin reading in verse 10. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I am grieved that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was troubled, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. Early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul. But he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument. Listen to this. There he has set up a monument in his own honor, and has turned and gone down to Gilgal. You just heard Rocky shake his ears. Did you hear that? So Saul is gone, and we see how his heart has turned. He's built a monument there in his own honor, and God has told Samuel, I'm no longer pleased with Saul. I am sad that I made him king to begin with. And verses 16 to 26 tell us what happens. Samuel goes to Saul, begins to tell him what the Lord has said, that he's no longer has his favor. Saul begins to argue in verse 16. Stop, Samuel said to Saul. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Tell me, Saul replied. Samuel said, although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and he sent you on a mission, saying, go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Different name, not the Ammonites, Amalekites. Make war on them until you've wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? But I did obey the Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission. The Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. But Samuel replied, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the voice of the Lord? You know that truth. The Lord wants obedience more than sacrifice. To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance the evil of idolatry. because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." Then Saul said to Samuel, "I have sinned. I violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the people, and so I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me so that I may worship the Lord." But Samuel said to him, "I will not go back with you. You have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you as king over Israel." And we jump over about 10 verses and we see where Samuel and Saul part ways, never to see each other again. Verse 34 and 35. Then Samuel left for Ramah, but Saul went up to his home in Gibeah of Saul. Until the day Samuel died, he did not go see Saul again, though Samuel mourned for him. And the Lord was grieved that he had made Saul king over Israel. So we see the first of the kings. He is anointed, or called by God, anointed by Samuel. And we see the change in his life. He goes, and his first response to the call of God is, "God, I'm not big enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not prepared enough." And God says, "I've called you. That is enough." And through his time as serving as king, he came to the point where he began to build monuments to himself, much like an emperor would do. God says, "You have failed me, Saul. You've changed. You've drifted from me. You've wandered from me. You've begun to worship yourself. You've begun to listen to the people more than you listen to me, and now I have rejected you." God calls Samuel to now anoint another king, to anoint the one who would succeed Saul. And that is where we will begin next Sunday night. God bless you. Have a good evening.